think that we can have common ground here. I mean, for example, if you look at some of these cities, major cities, Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, a lot of these illegal immigrants are migrating to these cities. In recent videos, we've seen, especially in New York, where the illegal immigrants attacked police officers. Now, this is just completely acidine. I mean, if we're going to allow people in, and then under certain cities, which we could dive into deeper, Kacee, which are sanctuary cities, if we're going to allow crime in states and cities that are, let's say, more tight on gun laws, how are the citizens going to protect themselves? Not only that, but I mean, in the recent years, we've also seen a surge in fentanyl overdoses. And the scary thing is, a lot of people might not understand this, but a lot of the drugs that flood into our country come from the southern border. And particularly, which I'd like to say, the cartels have a major connection with. They make a lot of money off this. So whenever they heard the opportunity that the border is going to be open and that Title 42 was going to be abolished, this was a payday for them. I need people to understand that very clearly. This was a payday for the cartels. And not only that drugs are pouring in, but for people that are very concerned about human sex trafficking, child sex trafficking, this all relates to the southern border. I mean, this is just allowing people to have total, undeniable access into our country. And without any border, you might as well not have a country in the first place.
You're exactly right. I mean, I think it's 7.2 million illegals have stormed through the southern border just under the Biden administration. So, I mean, that's absolutely crazy. And the fact that you're going to basically say that regular Americans should be enticed to go along with this system and say that, because Johnny the migrant came through the border, he's getting this $600 credit card, he's getting free shelter, he's getting all these benefits that, frankly, our own Americans aren't even getting. So someone who definitely immigrated in the country, that's got to be a very insightful perspective. I mean, I understand how that's got to be crucial into this decision making. I guess how you feel about this, but I also wanted to touch up on Gen Z. So you and I are actually, I guess, part of the same generation. Is that right?
Yes, sir. I'm 26, which would be considered the oldest for Gen Z. I was born in 97.
Awesome. So yeah, I'm 2000. So kind of the same area. So I would say with Gen Z, one of the biggest issues from my perspective is I would say the TikTok brain, the inability to, it's not even exactly the Gen Z's fault. There is a lot of financial illiteracy within the school systems. But from your take, what do you think is the biggest thing holding back our generation?
Well, Kacee, I think actually I have very high hopes for our generation. I read there's some articles out there that if people are willing to look them up on their own time, they can. But they actually say that Gen Z men are the most conservative out of the recent generations. Now, we could break this down in a couple of different ways. Now, let's just ask ourselves, why is that the case? And we could take me and you, for instance, here. We were raised in a time where before the social media boom, before everything got political, we kind of had a sense of how things worked in the world. Now, I like to give an example of also Gen Zers that are probably 10 years younger than us, which I like to call the iPad babies. Now, these kids are completely different than me and you, 100%. I mean, they can't have a conversation. They can't even look you in the eye whenever they talk to you. It seems that almost every time that they have free time, they're just constantly on their phone. And that's scary. And I think what the social media companies are doing, it's on purpose. The way they set up these algorithms is to keep people distracted. And there's no doubt in my mind that they're trying to manipulate Gen Z. They're trying to get people our age to believe in certain things that just don't align with the American values or the family unit, let's say. With that being said, I mean, you could go in depth and say that feminism is a major problem in Gen Z. A lot of females in our generation believe in the idea of feminism, in which we can break this down a little bit more later. But also the LGBTQ community. I believe that 1 in 4 Gen Zers label themselves as non-binary or whatever they may be, which is okay, as long as you're over the age of 18, in my perspective. There's absolutely no reason why kids should be presented with sex change, in elementary school, which we've seen in some states. It's actually acidine and sickening. And the fact that some people are thinking this is okay, I can't wrap my head around it. I truly can't. And I'm just a young American just trying to get by in life, you know? And another thing is, I hear a lot of older generations. They say, oh, well, Gen Z complains too much. Oh, Gen Z's lazy. Well, I never hear I never hear the older generations take responsibility, right?
Yeah.
I never hear them say, you know what? Maybe it was us, the parents, that raised you wrong. Never that gets brought up. It never does. And so it's funny. I actually did a little bit of research before I came on your show, Kacee, and
Hmm.
surprisingly enough, a lot of the streamers that we see nowadays, they're not people our age. These are actually people that would fall into the millennial category. And so it's
Yeah.
interesting. Whenever they say, oh, Gen Z is lazy and such, that's not really the case. If you look at the workforce, Gen Z is actually getting very involved. And I actually would like to blame COVID a little bit from actually shortening us and our opportunities from expanding out into this world. With COVID, obviously, the whole world changed. Um, I
It really
was
made everyone disenfranchised, from my opinion. I think everyone was totally caught up in this, I guess, this virtual world, kind of like the same time the metaverse came into attack when everybody was locked down. And it really did a toll on people's psyche, I feel like our age or our generation. And you totally touch up on that very well, basically how, they'll classify Gen Z as millennials, and there isn't really a fine line with, I mean, the average person I talk to doesn't even understand what either of them are. So, no, you definitely had that exactly right.
and also to touch base on this more, Casey, is it's very interesting. With COVID, I think now I have to be careful what I say because I've been banned off Facebook and other platforms. But with Rumble
Same.
and with Twitter, luckily we could speak the way we speak now. But
Yeah, we're good on Rumble.
I think COVID though was set up to almost disenfranchise our generation. If you look back 10 people that are 10 years younger than us, when people that were in school during COVID, look at test scores. They drastically changed. If you ask any kid that was in high school, middle school, or elementary school, hey, how was school during COVID? They hated it. There was no social life. They weren't getting taught the curriculum that they needed to be, at least well enough. And that's going to affect a generation. If you take kids out of school for a year, 6 months, 3 months, a month, it's going to affect the child's learning. And so, with that said, I mean, there's certain things that happened within the past 3 years, especially during lockdowns, which might be inevitable to change. It's going to be interesting whenever 5, 10 years come down the line, I think.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see the overall effects on that. I mean, I think another thing, though, that's been a lot of the garbage taught throughout the education system, especially today, you have DEI, affirmative action, basically telling kids that you are disadvantaged because of the color of your skin. Nothing to do with your content of your character. It's strictly to do with your, I mean, things that you literally can't control. So it's absolutely absurd that they're teaching this garbage, and it honestly isn't very surprising to see why so many people are disenfranchised. They have different ideologies, and they're identifying as things that aren't even biologically real. So it's like there's so many different factors. It's like a spider web. There's so many different things that I guess our generation is facing. I would say we're also in an information war. Doesn't matter if you're our generation or just, I mean, really anybody. I just think we're in a very crucial time right now in 2024 that's really going to decide the fate of, I would say, human existence. I mean, some can say that the election is a big factor, but I mean, what's your take on that? What do you think is going to be I guess, the most important factor that's going to decide the fate of human existence?
I think the most important factor going forward is just making sure that the truth gets out. I mean, with certain websites like Facebook, like Instagram, like TikTok, like YouTube, they are not allowing the full story to be told. And people need to understand this very clearly. Whenever you are censoring stories, you are limited to know what is actually going on. And that's where the propaganda machine comes in perfectly. And this was set up actually by the Obama administration. Kacee, I'm not sure when your first election was, but mine was in 2016. And for your viewers to know and your audience to know, I will probably be voting for Donald J. Trump a third time in the presidential election. So with this being said, whenever Donald Trump was elected in 2016, the first thing that really opened up my eyes was he went straight after the media. He said, fake news, fake news, fake news. And another thing that he said that really kind of lit the candle for me, especially, was in 2015 in the Republican primaries. No nominee has ever said this, but he said that the weapons of mass destruction that made us go into war with Iraq and Afghanistan, it was a lie. It was a lie. Growing up, we were told that terrorists attacked the Twin Towers. Now, there could be different things that people say about the Twin Towers conspiracy, sure. This isn't what me and you were talking about specifically, but we've heard for the first time that our government lied to us about sending over troops and thousands of people dying. I mean, at some point, when are people going to wake up and put their foot on the pedal and say, you know what, our government's lying to us. Maybe they don't have the best interest in us. But to go back to your question, Kacee, I think the most important thing is for people to be open-minded, especially people our age, because something I've noticed, especially our generation, is they'll see something online and they automatically assume it without really looking into it itself. And that can be scary. It can be very scary that way. And that's a very easy way to manipulate an entire generation if people aren't willing to look up things themselves.
Yeah, I mean, we live in a generation where there's no research being done. It's just a generation full of headline readers, really. If you take that next step and actually do, hell, anyone watching this, a 5 10 seconds of more research than what you normally do, that's going to give you so much more of an advantage than someone who's just a headline reader. You'd be surprised what you can come up with just reading a few lines, few paragraphs of a class or just regular information. You can determine and paraphrase for yourself. But with that being said, that was a really good point about 9/11, especially how our government lied to us. It's actually been proven. It's not even a conspiracy that they did the 9/11 Commission lied to us. And the fact that a different story, really, Julian Assange, he is currently incarcerated in the United Kingdom and is actually facing extradition to the United States, which they're trying to charge him an additional 175 years, all because one of the three reasons is he actually exposed that the United States was executing innocent civilians within Iraq. It's actually up on one of Tucker Carlson's podcasts. He actually exposed it, so I'm not making that up. But it just shows you, like you said, there is a group of people that are willing to go at great lengths to suppress the truth. And Julian Assange is a great example. We see people like, if you've heard of Andrew Tate, I'm sure, with what he's going through. So you have a lot of, I guess, with the mainstream media trying to decipher the truth from people and try to really just take away what we have. And we saw with the Patriot Act, actually, was that during the Bush administration?
That was.
Yep. So that essentially took away our rights of privacy online. We no longer had the ability to have privacy on the internet, which again is monitored by everybody. And Edward Snowden was able to prove that. But what's your take on that? Do you think that we live in a surveillance state, like we're being over monitored? How big of an issue do you see that is right now?
Oh, completely. I mean, Kacee, let's just go back to COVID, pre-COVID. Let's go back to 2019. Yeah. Okay. You could get on Facebook and you could say whatever the hell you wanted. And then as soon as COVID happened and right before the election, if you said keywords like COVID, stolen election, it was amazing. Your post would be up for 3 minutes, and then all of a sudden you might get an email from Facebook saying this is disinformation. The fact checkers checked you, and you're wrong. Well, who are these fact checkers? It's really interesting. I think there might be a room full of people that just spend their entirety of their day just looking up these keywords, and whatever doesn't fit their narrative, they will flag it. And that's what's scary about these platforms. And I encourage a lot of people my age and your age in my community to use X, to use Rumble. It's very interesting, Kacee, because I actually had this conversation with a family member whenever I was actually banned off Facebook. And I'll tell you the reason why I was actually banned off Facebook. This might shock you.
Did you get banned? Like, was this during 2020? Was this like when they were suppressing everything?
So glad you asked. So I actually got suspended 3 times. The 3 times I got suspended for was basically talking about the 2020 election, just my personal views, and then talking about COVID, talking about how the CDC, nothing made sense of what they were saying and how they were being wishy-washy and everything. But the thing that actually got me banned was last year. I posted videos of it was actually in Southern America of children being sex trafficked. It was very hard evidence, and to be honest, the video was pretty raw. I mean, it showed kids being taken off a boat with them having their hands duct taped behind their backs, duct tape around their mouth, and then being tied to trees. The video was rough. I'm not going to lie. Facebook banned me, saying that the video I posted was misinformation and disinformation, saying that I was putting out wrong information. And that to me really struck the bullet. And something I'd like to let your viewers know is the people that are willing, or the people that are wanting to take down videos of pedophilia and child sex trafficking usually are the ones that are involved in it.
That's a good point. I would say the same way. I literally got banned, or I didn't get banned. I got demonetized on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, currently shadow banned on all three. So I haven't actually faced the suspension yet, fortunately, but it is a major issue. I mean, like I said, I've literally don't have the ability to make money on some of the major platforms. And there probably is a group of fact checkers, of private actors hired by NGOs to do this. This walk by, or that's really, I would say it's more of a individual type of thing. They'll probably go through individual cases of people they see and flag, but it's also content on the app. Like you said, keywords that you use, especially like if you use COVID, vaccine, you question anything like the Black Lives Matter riot. That's what actually was. I faced a lot of I'm trying to think of the word. I faced a lot of harsh conditions due to that. Basically saying, George Floyd, this guy was. You think this guy is actually, just because of one issue, that there should be a systemic, basically, reason to say that the country is racist, when really it's just one isolated issue. So it's like you almost couldn't even say the truth on any social media platform before Elon bought X. You had Mark Zuckerberg, and still today, censoring everybody throughout the Meta platforms. You have you had Jack Dorsey, and the guy who took over before, who was, banning people left and right, mainly conservative figures, though, which I could argue would be election interference at the time.
Oh, absolutely.
But yeah. And then Elon buying X in end of 2022. What I will say about X, it's the most censorship resistant platform. There is censorship. I will say there are people that are still banned and do get banned, but it's not anywhere near the capacity that you see on any of these other platforms. And freely speaking, I would say Rumble is probably the most censorship resistant. I have literally never seen anything get taken down from Rumble. I don't know if you have, but from my perspective, X, Rumble, even Telegram, some of the most free speech apps that if we didn't have today, I really don't know where we would be today from the last 3 years. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And Kacee, something that I haven't really talked about in Spaces is that at one point I actually lost all hope for humanity. At one point, I'm not kidding. After 2020, and then after all the suppression that conservatives were facing, and this is before Elon bought X, I thought there was almost no hope. It felt like we couldn't get our voices heard, and that everyone was just being lied to. We see the power of the mainstream media and what they do and say in order to get a spark out of people. We've seen it now. And thank God Elon has bought this platform, because if he hasn't, who knows where we would be at right now. But yes, with that censorship that we're talking about, it's going to be very interesting, I think, with the 2024 election coming up. And I encourage people that are our age and older to seriously keep an eye out for this. If you are still on the other platforms that censor, you don't have to post it yourself, but just keep an eye out for it. They as soon as someone posts something that goes against their agenda, they will flag it, take it down, or ban them.
Absolutely. We see it all the time. And another thing that even X can do very sneakily is they won't say it, they won't confirm it to be shadow banning, but they'll kind of just not give you the reach that you've really been getting. Like, for instance, you'll get 2-3 consecutive posts getting a couple thousand views, and then randomly you'll just get like 20 views out of nowhere. It's like, well, I know it's not because the stuff I'm posting isn't interesting enough. They literally are limiting my reach. I don't know if you've had that from your experience happen, but I've more so than recently, I've seen a lot of I don't know, a lot of strange things happened with my account, I'll say.
Yeah, I'm actually glad you asked that, Casey. It's interesting. I actually just got my account back on X. I was on a 4-month suspension from the months of
Really?
from the months of September to January. One of my good friends on X, you can find him at, his name is Alpha Fox, and
Oh yeah.
he posted a video, and it was a comedy skit. It was very clear as a comedy skit, but it basically was showing that there were climate protesters in the road, and this guy was acting like he was running them over, like he had the camera on him that looked like the car was bouncing. All I said in the comments was "great tutorial guide," and they hit me with that. They permanently suspended me actually at first. I think I emailed them about 150 times to repel that suspension. And then one day I checked my email and boom, I got my account back. And ever since I got my account back, I've been more vocal than ever.
Yeah, same here. I mean, like I said, I've never faced the scrutiny of being completely suspended. Can't imagine what that would feel like. I mean, just opening your phone one day and boom, you don't have the access. Like I did that, almost feels bizarre to me. But
Mhm.
I mean, throughout your experience, you said you were banned on Facebook. You've been banned on X. Do you actually get banned on TikTok? I would assume as well if you ever made an account.
Well, to be honest with you, Casey, I actually do not have TikTok. I've never had
Mm.
TikTok. I don't believe TikTok is a good platform. Speaking of that, the CCP controls the
Yeah.
platform. So, with that being said, I've never put TikTok on my phone because I did not want the Chinese Communist Party to have access to what is in my phone, in which I have nothing really to hide, but I just don't want that data in my phone. There's been studies shown in the past that TikTok's algorithm is actually probably one of the most powerful of any other social media platform. And the people that design TikTok, they're not dumb people. I want to make this very clear. The people that create these algorithms are very, very smart people. They know exactly what they're doing whenever they create these algorithms. So what are they trying to do? They're literally trying to keep you distracted. And yeah, a lot of my friends have TikTok, family members have TikTok. I try to tell them delete that crap. It's a waste of time. Um, and yeah, so I try to tell people in my friend group, don't get on social media. It's bad for you. You do something else productive. Build a business. Try to network like me and you do on X. Get out there and go to the gym. It's actually really surprising. Not trying to get too off topic here, but we're talking
There you
about
go.
our generation. A lot of people are, it seems, unmotivated. And I blame that because of social media. And social media, it's very interesting. Some of these platforms, they've been advocating for people to not go to the gym. They say, oh, going to the gym's toxic. So it's very interesting on the platforms that, like me and you will say, is very censorable, which others may say not so bad. But the things that they're pushing out there is very bad.
Yeah, it's very toxic. That's what I'll say. I do have TikTok, but I'm someone I will never consume anything on there. Again, I'll admit I could be guilty of this, but I post content, my content that is, it's not Chinese propaganda, but I try to get the message out there to everybody basically. I don't agree with TikTok at all. Like I said, don't consume any content, but the vast majority or the small amount of people that are brainwashed and stuck in that little TikTok bubble, well, I'm trying to pop that by giving them the truth that, again, I've had a few videos taken down. I've never been suspended, but yeah, TikTok it's very, very harmful. And the only reason I do use it is to try to give insightful information to the people that are really brainwashed, I'll say. But yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I think our generation is definitely, they're stuck in this lazy bubble because of TikTok, because of I would say the social media gives a lot of people the false or the fallacy of a lifestyle that isn't really there in a sense. And something I will tell people is that, and I'll tell my viewers all the time, use social media as an extension of your life, not a substitute. So like basically do what you're doing and show your, like for instance, go to the gym and I don't know, maybe you record yourself working out or something. Actually be an extension of your life. Don't substitute it by just sitting down all day, just, being lazy, unproductive to society. I can't say the numbers and on which how many people of our generation do that. I'm sure there is statistics out there, but I don't know. I can say that another thing though, there isn't much of how can these people be enticed to go into the workforce to have a stable career when one, the economy is the worst it's been in 40 years. Like we said, the southern border out of control. You have illegal immigrants getting better care than our own people. So you can really see the disenfranchisement in our generation. There is some to blame. A lot of people do play the victim card, but you have to understand, like, picture like you said, like before Gen Z, it was before 2006, there was no internet. There was internet. There was no social media. There was no vast networking like we're doing now. And you had to say, like, our younger years, I remember I had to go outside and do something. I had to look outside the window and find something interesting. Like I had to pay much more attention to detail than what people are required to today. And I'm glad I experienced that. I'm glad I got to spend the first, I'd say, 6 years of my life when the iPhone wasn't invented. I got to see a different side of the world. And I can't really say when I think everything changed, because something definitely did this century. Was it 2006 after the iPhone revolution? Was it 2012 after the Obama administration had an overreach in the justice system? Was it COVID? I mean, I'm just curious on what your take on that. When do you think this century everything just completely, like, it was like a paradigm shift?
I think it was built up over time, Kacee.
Yeah.
What the things that we're experiencing now didn't just happen in the span of 4, 6, 10 years. I mean, this, I think, has been building up for a while. And something I love to tell people is if they go to my X page, I encourage people to look at my highlight tab, because I pretty much say the same things under my highlight tab that I do in spaces or on people's shows. And something I try to tell people, especially our age, it's very important for young men to be stoic. And I think the number one thing you can do as a man is get your life in order, be the strongest, most honorable, best version of yourself. Don't be a bad person, be a good person. Tell the truth, be honorable, protect the people that you care about, be polite to everybody, make as much money as you can, go to the gym, get in shape, and find others who are on the same mission as you. I think a lot of people our age, and maybe I should clarify here, people younger than us, I think they lack brotherhood, Kacee. And life without brotherhood is very, very difficult. And then you see our government, Canada's government, and this is what really ticks me off. They tell people to act how they feel. And when I'm a big advocate, Kacee, on bringing back masculinity. If people read my tweets, I'm very, very big about bringing back masculinity. And what I like to say about that is a traditional masculine man does things he doesn't feel like doing because it is his duty to do them. A firefighter charges into a burning building because it is his duty, not because he feels like it, but because it's his duty. And we're now teaching this new generation of men that they don't have to have duty, and they can just act on their feelings and act how they feel, and they don't have to act as a man should. You know what happens when you give men that advice and they act how they feel? You get school shooters, you get violence, you get rapists. Men who do not control their emotions are dangerous. And if you find a man who is stoic, he's not going to hurt people. He's going to sit down, think about his actions very carefully. He's going to be a good man who protects and provides for his family. And if you find a man who just acts out on impulse or does whatever he feels like, you're going to find a dangerous man. Sitting here telling men to cry more and act how they feel and act with their feelings, and it's okay to feel this way or that way, etc., still have no self-control. And this is why we have the problems we have in today's world, Kacee. We need to be teaching stoicism. We need to be teaching young men to understand that the world is very, very difficult. It's hard to be a man. You're going to feel bad sometimes. You just need to suck it up and perform anyways.
No, well said. I think we don't teach stoicism enough. And anyone that's not familiar with what that means, it's really just the idea that, like you said, you get things done not because you feel like it, because you have to. It's your duty as a man. Excellent way to put that. And I think it goes a long way with the nuclear family, having a father in the household. When you don't teach people that they need to be tough, they need to be responsible for their actions, you get people that are careless, and they're not going to sit here and say, I need to take charge of my family. I need to make sure everything is set in order. And it's like it's like a generation of victims. That's when you're a victim. When you think you're a victim, you just blame everyone. You're just looking for excuses. And that's unfortunately what we see. And when you think like the goal of the deep state, right? Like if you think a little deeper here, like the globalists, the people who really want to depopulate the earth, well, what's a easy way to do that? Not easy. I'd say what's the first step? Well, let's divide the equivalent or the reality of the nuclear family. Let's make it to where there's women are more masculine, women are getting masculine traits, but yet men are getting more feminine. They're giving men excuses to cry. It's like I don't really understand how. I mean, I do understand, but it's just crazy that our generation's been psyoped like this. I mean, it's the ultimate psyops, the way I look at it.
100%, Kacee. And there's a couple different things that they're doing to not only our generation, but I mean, even older generations. And this might get the women pissed off at me, but I have a huge problem against the feminist movement. And the biggest thing against the feminist movement is it literally divides the nuclear family. Same goes with racism. Same goes with, I don't know, but feminism is really a big thing that I'm like very against. And it's funny, women will say, oh, we don't need men in the sense because, or they say that they don't need men in sense. And they say that because nowadays life is soft, and it's bullshit. It's bullshit because you need man by proxy, one, and two, life gets difficult. Very quickly, you'll learn how much you need men. But women will go on and say, oh, I'm independent. I don't need no man because I have an OnlyFans and men buy my OnlyFans. If anyone comes up to me, I'll call a male police officer. Yeah, okay. Of course you do. Of course you need men. Your life is based on fucking men. The roads you are driving on were paved by men. The house you're living in was built by men. The car you drive was designed by a man. Your whole life depends on men, and the second anything bad were to happen to you, the second you were physically threatened or times get hard or war were to start or famine or riots, the first thing you'll do is find a big, strong man, shit yourself, and throw feminism out the window. Feminism goes out the fucking window the second anything goes wrong or anything goes wrong. And it also goes out the window the second that the snow needs shoveling, that the car breaks down, or the tire needs a change. It's all garbage. It vanquishes immediately. It's quite astounding, actually, because I've seen this in my own perspective, in my own relationship. And so whenever I hear women say, oh, I don't need a man, I just sit back and say, yeah, okay. It's quite funny that a lot of these women that say that the feminist movement is empowering, like, oh, you go, girl, you go. I'm independent. Yeah, let's see whenever World War III starts. I hope they're willing to be the first ones on the front lines.
Well, exactly. That's a good point. Think of the example the other day with the tragic Kansas City massacre. I mean, I don't know if you saw, but there was actually one of the suspects that were taken down were two masculine men. There's a video. They literally saw this guy start shooting at the crowd. Everyone else is running away, but these two men, they took down this guy because they instinctually thought that was right. And that's where you really see like this whole toxic masculinity, that whole feminist garbage, it goes out the window when something like that happens. I mean, perfect example. I mean, we're going to see it, unfortunately, in the way that the world is today. We're setting ourselves up for more tragic things like this to happen, whether it's the border or mental health. But it's just absolutely absurd that that people are going to sit here and try to spew this garbage. I mean, 100%. I'm trying to. Yeah, what were you saying?
Oh, I was disagreeing with you, but touching also on that, I'd like to say something for the men in our generation, Kacee, because I see that a lot of younger men, I don't know if it's because they're heartbroken or maybe because they just weren't raised right, but a lot of men our age and younger don't really seem to have respect for women. And what I would like to tell them is men need to have respect for women's emotional needs. We talked about protect and provide for them, but women are emotional creatures, and sometimes they're going to get upset. Sometimes they're going to cry. Sometimes they're going to be illogical. Sometimes they're going to be sad. Sometimes they're going to call you and give you a headache. And you need to be a man enough to deal with that and to make her feel better, and you need to be stoic enough to not get annoyed by it and just be the rock she wants. So you're going to have to be able to provide a degree of emotional security and emotional safety net. And you do that by being stoic enough to understand her moods and deal with her emotional needs without fighting with her all the time. And so I see a lot of relationships, especially younger relationships, where if something doesn't go either or's way, it starts a fight. I try to tell people, I'm no counselor, by the way. I just want to make that clear. I'm no Dr. Phil. But it's okay to disagree with your partner. Come up with a solution together. That is the beauty. I mean, God created man and woman, and us together as one is a very powerful thing. It's very powerful. Whenever you have a man and woman that are on the same page, it's almost unbeatable. I promise.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. So do you think it's possible for somebody with opposing political views to be in a long-lasting relationship or a marriage? Like, for instance, you have the most left-wing liberal, and you have the most conservative type of dude. So like you try to put those people together, and you have those traits in common, or I'm sorry, in difference. Do you think that is something that could even be possible in a marriage? Like,
I think in the older days, yes. In today's age, I would say no. And I solely blame that on social media. I mean, people, the thing is that the spectrum of politics have gone so far right and so far left where the common ground is almost kind of vanquished from now. Um, it's interesting you asked that question because I was in a relationship where it was more like that. And for a while, uh, I would listen to her. I'd listen to her ideas, and then I mean, I'm not gonna lie. There's some democratic ideas that I could agree with. I agree with preserving national parks. There's one. There's some things that I could see in their eyes. Unfortunately, I think I should say, fortunately, I think our side of the political aisle is more open-minded. But for the other side, the second they hear something that doesn't go their way, their heads seem to explode like an airhead, and I don't get why. So it's very sad because, yes, if you look at the rate of divorce nowadays, it's the highest it's ever been. People are getting.
I think it's like, isn't it like 60% or something like that? Like it's
No,
crazy high.
I believe it's at 52, 53, but still, I mean, it's at a record breaking. And if you look at marriage rates, they're going down. If you look at childbirth rates, they're going down. So, I mean, at some point, we got to ask ourselves, what's going on here? And I think what's going on is what we've been talking about this whole time. It's the divide and conquer by these social media companies.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's the whole premise of what they can do. It's crazy. I don't think that the government, I don't think everyone was ready for the internet the way it exploded so fastly. I really think it was something that it's obviously not transcribed in the Constitution, but I think that for the government or any government to say that, okay, social media rights or your right to speak online is transparent to the First Amendment, they didn't necessarily make that correlation. Like I said, they came up with things like the Patriot Act, things that allow them to spy on you, and things that, you know, they hire NGOs, private actors to do the censoring for them. But I mean, it's just like, I'm just wondering how could the monumental impact of X and Rumble, like, do you think that could actually put companies like Meta and TikTok out of business, or do you think there'll always be that competitive edge between the companies?
Well, unfortunately, Casey, with Meta, I think they have the backbone and support with our government. So as long as they are getting funded by our government, I think it's going to be very hard to take them down at the moment. Little by little, though, day by day, I think the ice is breaking on their end. I think more people are waking up. They're seeing the bullshit that's going on. And I think a majority of Americans are tired of it. I think a majority of Americans, what's not even our generation, a majority of people are tired of being told what to do, how to do it, and how to feel. We don't want to be told what to do. We're American. You know what the premise of our country is to live freely. And God damn it, quit telling us how to live and how to do things, because it's starting to wake up, I think, the silent majority.
Yeah, it's life, liberty, and property. I mean, those are the things that we were given in the Constitution. And that's another thing, though. I want to hear your take on taxes. I usually ask everybody this because everybody has different answers. Do you agree with the current tax system? And if not, how could it change? How would you change it?
I do not agree with the current tax system. And my take on taxes might actually surprise you, Kacee. I guess this would be more of a libertarian view I have, but I would almost say that everyone, if you're a United States citizen, if you make $500,000 or if you make $50,000, everyone gets taxed the same. I would say at a 1.5% tax rate. Now, I've heard some backlash from people saying, oh, well, how is that fair for someone that makes $20,000 compared to someone that makes $200,000? And the thing is, the person that makes $20,000 is going to get taxed actually less because their income's less. And the person that's making over $200,000, that 1.5% is going to be a higher number than the person making 20%. And so with with the current tax system, it is utterly bullshit. Let me explain why. I am currently a union member. I'm a carpenter. And
Hmm.
so whenever I first got into union, which was 2019, I was making pretty good money. And let me remind you, I wasn't I make hourly, and whenever I first got in, I was making like 15, 16 bucks an hour. 2019, that was good money to me.
Hmm.
Now I'm over the $40 hour range, and I'm actually making less money. I mean, I look at my paychecks, and besides union dues, don't get me started on that. But besides that, I look at my federal income tax, and it's almost quadrupled. I mean, I'm having triple the money taken out. And then you can look at other things like the price for groceries, the price for gas, price for everything has gone up. And so I don't get why people on the left haven't like kind of woken up, because surprisingly enough, I will give the left credit. They are very good with getting out their opinions. They are very good at being vocal and getting involved. I will give them hands-on credit for that.
I will say the best example of that. Again, I find it hard. I'm a conservative, very America first, very different than the rhinos. But when it comes to liberals, very few of people I will listen to, and actually I feel like has the mutual respect of other people. I'll say people like the Krasenstein brothers. You have Michael Rappaport. Again, I don't fully agree with. There's so many things I could list off of ways I disagree with these guys, but I think finding a common ground is important. And you have to find people, and even someone like I would say I really disagree with. I could roast all day. Destiny, the blue hair streamer guy. Have you heard of him?
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought up the streamers, because it's very weird that these people are making such loads of money by playing video games. I try to tell people our age all the time, in order to become something, you need to go through some shit in life. If you take a man who's never been through anything, or never been through hardship, or has never been through any like hard things, they're probably not going to be a very good man. But if you get a man that has been through the shit, has been through the rock bottom, and has found his way to the mountaintop, he's going to be a very good man, and he will know exactly what to do in certain situations.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And another thing though, I think is so I'm trying to think. We covered the main issue with the transgenderism, the feminism. We have the economy. I mean, I'm sorry. Another thing I want to mention is inflation. So another thing people will not actually understand, or don't take the full time to understand. They'll just look at their paychecks and be like, oh, I can afford this or that. Well, the inflation rate is crucial because they'll say it's 6%, 8%, 7%. It's coming down. Well, the thing about inflation is it's not transitory. It's something that's designed to last forever, right? So the Federal Reserve, they print endlessly. They print whenever the warmongers want to fund some foreign war. They can print whenever they decide. And who is that affect? Who's that at the detriment of? That's us, the American taxpayer, because that money that we're taking home. And yeah, we're getting raises. There are good parts about our economy, being such a large trade partner with $6.6 trillion on a daily average in the Forex market. We're just really bleeding ourselves out over time by just printing the US dollar continuously. And another thing is we have no backing of the gold standard. There's no backing of the US dollar by anything, right? We're $34 trillion in debt. And you actually, if it's funny, I tell people this all the time. And I'm not joking. If you go to the actual debt clock, you can see the gold ratio to the dollar over time. It used to actually be worth something back in before Nixon changed it, and there was a lot of discrepancies with the gold standard. Gold was actually, or the U.S. dollar was actually equivalent to gold. It actually had intrinsic worth, but now it is literally zero. The debt clock will show the gold to dollar ratio is nothing. I mean, it's a joke. It's saying, okay, so if it's not attached to any tangible object, then the only worth of the U.S. dollar is the full faith and credit of the United States. Well, that full faith and credit is $34 trillion in debt that's continuously increasing. And there's no sign in sight that says I can be confident as an American consumer, as an investor. It really leads all these options out the door. I mean, I'll say even investing in the S&P index, which you're investing in the top 100 companies in America, no matter what, that's not even keeping up with inflation. if we look at it in all reality of the microeconomics and macroeconomics. But inflation, I think, is one of the biggest issues that people actually don't understand or realize that, I mean, it controls everything. And if, let's just say the Federal Reserve didn't exist and they couldn't print any more money, yeah, it would slow down the expansion of the economy. But overall, the working man like you and me or anyone, they're going to have a lot more when they spend their money. They're going to be able to actually save. For instance, right, you have $10,000 in the bank account. And inflation rate is, in some countries, it's 50%, as crazy that is, a year. In Argentina, it was actually like 90. So let's just say it's 50% annually, right? Your $10,000 in a bank it still says 10,000, but a year later, it will only spend at $5,000. It doesn't say that. They don't expect you to realize. They don't expect you to keep up with inflation. But it's the hidden tax. It's the scam of the century. And I think until we fix that, we're going to have endless problems.
Oh, 100%. Kacee, what you explained was very well said. That it was really clear also. So for your viewers or anyone that's viewing this, I hope they would go back and take the time to re-listen to what you just said, and to really jump on to more of what you said. The thing that really I don't understand is how there's not enough people that are pissed off about the inflation rate. Like they say, it's at 3%. Like, I struggle to sleep at night. Like, I'm not kidding you. Like, I struggle to sleep at night because they're literally lying to our faces. Like, oh, inflation is 3%. That's a lie. I mean, look at grocery stores. This is a small example. I mean, me and you both know the inflation rate is a whole bunch of different things categorized together. But groceries is a good example to talk about. If you look at the price of eggs and how much it has jumped in the past 3 years, that number is a lot higher than 3%. If you look at milk, any product in the grocery store, it has risen by more than 3%. Now, some people that are more probably in flux with the economy than I am would say, oh, well, it's actually gone up and down. And it's almost back to even. No, that's bullshit. They're lying to us. And I think more people seriously need to wake up and realize that our government is lying to us. And I think once that happens, and I hope it happens sooner rather than later, because the problem is if people don't realize this soon enough, it's going to be too late for us to do anything.
It really will be. And the idea of the US dollar is they're bleeding us out, or they're bleeding your wealth out over 99 years. Mm-hmm. In countries like Mexico, where they hold the peso, you'll lose your wealth in 20 years. So it's a very hidden and clandestine way to take from people over time. And like you said, grocery stores increasing the prices. Yeah, they're increasing, but it's not like they don't understand the inflation rate. They're increasing the prices to where it's going to pass up the inflation rate. So they're just as involved with the private sector and the government and deciphering what these prices are going to be. Same with oil, right?
Oh, 100%.
I mean, yeah, oil is the craziest thing. And actually, another thing, oil change. If you actually in 2020, just a regular oil change was about $40-50, which is still considered kind of pricey. I went in the other day and it was $117. $117 for a basic oil change. No other maintenance required. I was like, are you kidding me? I was appalled. I literally started calling other shops. I was like, okay, this is a price war. Clearly, they're just trying to screw me over. Well, I come to find out that I couldn't find a single maintenance shop that was charging for an oil change under $100. So
wow.
That really tells you the truth. That really tells you where we're at right now. I mean, if companies have to do that, I mean, really, we don't even know what the inflation rate is. Like I said, Jerome Powell, the Fed, they'll tell us 6%, 8%, 3%. That's not the definition. It's literally, technically everything has a different inflation rate. My laptop has a different inflation rate than the Empire State Building. The groceries at the store have a different inflation rate than a library book. So like everything devalues at a different rate when it comes to inflation. Mm-hmm. And one of the biggest things I'll tell my viewers, and I'm a big proponent of, is Bitcoin, an alternative currency, if you're familiar with, it's a peer-to-peer currency you can send to anyone. It's a computational network that is completely anonymous to where, it's not involved with any government or intermediaries. So that's why I'll say I'm a big proponent of Bitcoin, and it's an actual asset according to the SEC. But I think it's interesting to look into alternative currencies other than the US dollar that's failing so miserably. We have a lot of different ways. I mean, in the cryptocurrency world, I won't get too deep into that, but there's so many different alternative ways to transact with people if you don't agree with the way the government's doing things. If you really think about it, right? I mean, hell, you even have gold if you want to. Gold is another way to transact if you firmly don't trust in fiat currency or the banks, which I don't believe anybody should. So like, I really wish I could find a way to have everybody knowing of this information, right? Because if everybody understood this, we would just storm the Federal Reserve tomorrow. We would say, all right, Jerome, this is a joke. Shut this shit down. We need to get rid of the unelected bureaucrats like Vivek Ramaswamy, presidential candidates made clear of. We need things like that. We need things like that. We need to shut down these bureaucrats that are literally just destroying the freedom that we have, in my opinion.
Oh, I 100% agree with you, Kacee. And another thing that add on to what you're saying is that I think, excuse me, something in my throat. I think once people, I really do hope people like wake up and realize that the government's lying to us and the government doesn't care for us. But the second that the people don't want, like the second that we put our foot down is the second that the government will change. And they're going to change because they don't have an option. It's very, I say this to people all the time. There's a lot more of us than there are of them. I try to say this all the time, and for some reason I get called crazy for it. But we are the silent majority. And as soon as people figure that out, there is a lot of things that we have control over, including what the Boston Tea Party. I love bringing up this example. People got so pissed off whenever they rose the tax for tea. And look what they did. It worked. And now people are sitting around on their ass, not really freaking out. They're like, oh, okay, whoopsie-doo, I'll get back on TikTok. And they don't care. It's actually scary that there's not enough people that care. And it makes you wonder what's going to happen next. Like, what can happen next?
Yeah, I mean, look at places like Poland, like France, like all these countries that are protesting, all the farmers that are protesting because of the high taxes, and they're basically just bleeding them to death. And the farmers are saying, we've had enough of this. They're on the streets protesting. It's all the EU countries. So there's like 13, 14 total. But they said, we've had enough. They're going to government buildings. They're dumping corn feed. They're literally throwing haystacks in McDonald's. They are revolting. It's a very similar incident to the Boston Tea Party. But the people have had enough. And all you look at in America, it's like we almost can't have a good protest, if you know what I'm saying. Like, it's the Black Lives Matter burning shit down. It's the one final decent protest we did have, January 6th, which, again, turned into a big setup and a Fedsurrection in which, they basically just made everybody there out to be Hitler in a sense. I mean, I've heard people actually say that. But, I mean, I did want to get your take on that. What was your take on January 6th?
I'm glad you asked this because I have been actually demonetized by actually both not conservatives, but I would say Republicans, and especially by Democrats and liberals. But I would completely agree with you. Our government was 100% involved. And for any person that might disagree with me watching this stream right now or watching it later, I would like to ask you guys something. If our government wasn't involved in this truly was an insurrection, why has it taken them so long to release the videotapes from the Capitol building? Why is it taking them so long to come up with a story? It seems as if they're just making it up as it goes. I actually know some people that were in Washington during that day. And so I talked to them after things sort of calmed down because I was trying to be careful and I didn't know what their situation was going to be. But after we knew everything was all right, I talked to them, and it's interesting. I'd like to share the story with you, Kacee. So the person that was there was actually outside the Capitol building. It's very interesting. They said that the Capitol Police, weren't stopping anybody. They were actually letting people through with open arms, showing them where to go, which is interesting because whenever I first heard this, I'm like, that sounds crazy, right? Police telling you where to go in the Capitol building, just letting you in? That doesn't sound right. Well, then, thank God for the Twitter files. I am so glad Elon released these. It basically says that. And then with Tucker leaving Fox, he interviews the Capitol police officer. he interviews other people that were at January 6th, and it's starting to look, and the light is starting to shine that this was pretty much a setup. I think that I shouldn't say I think, I know this was a sole effort to make Donald Trump look bad and his supporters to look bad and our movement to look bad. This wasn't I mean, if there was an insurrection, let's just say, like I love to give the example of the Kavanaugh hearings. There was no difference between the Kavanaugh hearings when people protested and stormed the Capitol also, I like to remind people, than January 6th. There's absolutely no difference. And then we also have up to current events with the Palestine-Israeli war where people are literally spray painting with graffiti and vandalizing Capitol buildings. They're going in there and vandalizing, but yet these people aren't being persecuted like J6ers were. And the people that have been persecuted, they're average day citizens like me and you, Kacee. These people are firefighters, they're carpenters, they're electricians, they're dentists. I mean, these are just average Joes, and they went to Washington to let their voices be heard because at that point in time, we felt like we didn't have no voice to be heard. We were taken off platforms. We were not allowed to speak our minds. So what happens? The people get together and, well, yeah, we saw what happens, and I would like to say, hopefully that never happens again, because I think if something along the lines of that does happen again, it could be a bigger crowd, and hopefully it would be less violent.
Well, you're exactly right. And I think a reason how that could happen again is if Donald Trump somehow doesn't win this election. I think even if this is the most fair election in history, and if he somehow loses, I don't see that sitting right with most conservatives, or I guess the vast majority of patriots. I mean, after everything we've seen, I just don't think people are going to take that. I think we're at a breaking point here. And if it is a dangerous thing, if in all reality, if Donald Trump does not win this election, because it's so obvious. I mean, if January 6th was the biggest concern, I don't even want to know what's going to happen if Trump loses this election. It's going to be absolute chaos. And just by talking about this now, the feds could sit here and say this is conspiracy. I really don't care because it's not, and I'm not going to do that. But it's absolutely insane that we have these persecuted or politically persecuted prisoners that are just, like you said, regular people just like you and me, carpenters, just regular employees. I've interviewed several people a few people from January 6th, and they told me the same thing. It was a police incited incident. It was everyone there gathering. It was very, very tense, but it's the same thing I heard. It's that everything was fine until the Capitol Police were instructed to fire at the crowd. Why that was, I mean, I wasn't there to see, but and on top of that, Tucker Carlson releases in 2022, right before he gets fired from Fox, the video of Jacob Chansley walking right through the Capitol with several police escorting him. I mean, it's so obvious. And the funniest thing is I actually interviewed somebody, I think it was it was a Vietnam War vet back in the day. And I showed him this video. I told him about this, and he didn't believe me. I had to actually show him the video for him to say, oh, wow, well, this is an eye-opener. Like something actually might have happened here. But it's like, of course, the mainstream media is not going to show this. And the average person who watches, the average normie, average person who watches CNN, Fox, they're going to have a completely alternative view than what some people like us are able to see on freedom of speech platforms. And it's just the whole January 6th narrative is something I think the feds and the deep state, whoever was involved, I think they really did not do a good job of covering up their tracks. I think they thought they were much slicker than what they were at first. Mm-hmm. Because, I mean, I'll give it to you this way, right? So when all this happened, obviously Donald Trump was, the impeachment. He gave the speech about how we should unite the Capitol and, stand there with him in protest. But not one single thing in that speech was incited to say, all right, guys, let's go mess up the Capitol. Let's literally start throwing shit like a bunch of middle-aged or mid-aged barbarians. That was never the case if you watch the speeches. I mean, I remember watching them. I'm at work one day, and then all of a sudden I hear that there's been some attack on the Capitol. Of course, that was a headline. But at first, they didn't direct. It's funny, if you actually remember, they didn't say that Trump was involved. It was just there was an attack on the Capitol. That wasn't the direct response. No media outlet said Donald Trump is directly involved. It was days after until they said, all right, this was incited by Donald Trump's speech. It's crazy how the media works, because I haven't said this. I'm like, just watch. This is the perfect thing for the left to use against Donald Trump. They could literally, again, he has nothing to do with the situation besides, being the sitting president during all this happening. And of course, the mainstream media says those are Donald Trump's followers. They were instructed by him to do this. And they use it's about the mainstream media taking words out of context, using short clips to just frame a narrative that doesn't frankly exist. And I think that's what we see today.
Oh, 100%, Casey. And if we go up to today's date, let's look at what this administration is labeling the MAGA movement. They're labeling the MAGA movement the biggest domestic terrorist threat. Okay? And that's a huge problem with me, because there is literally a lot worse people out in this world besides American patriots that actually want to do harm to this country. The people in Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Hamas, cartel. These are people that are actually domestic terrorists. I want to make this very clear to people. And this goes back to your southern border category. Who knows who's coming across the southern border? It's actually very interesting. The FBI director, he mentioned 2 weeks ago that there are more red flags going off right now in our country than there were before 9/11 happened. If that doesn't wake people up, I seriously don't know what will. And another thing I would like to say, Kacee, is that people need to be eerie of who they listen to, because we have people our age, like a Harry Sisson or a Chris Mowry,
Yes.
who are paid. I want to make sure this is very clearly said, paid by the Democratic Party to promote things that are false. And it's very scary whenever you have people that are put in these positions to say things that are not true. Because unfortunately, like we talked earlier, there are people our age that just are naive. It's sad to say, but they are just naive people, and they believe what they read and believe what they hear, and they just hear it and they run with it. But the fact that our government, our own government, the government that is supposed to take care of us, are calling us a threat to democracy, that should be a red flag itself.
Oh, 100%. I mean, it couldn't be any more obvious. We have so many more outside threats than what's happening within our country. It's interesting we talk about the border, right? It's not just the southern border. It's the northern border now. And Yacumba, California, that's where Fox and Bill Malugin are covering right now. They literally have the fence for the border, and it stops at a rock, and it's completely wide open for everybody else to just walk right through. So essentially there isn't a border in places like California, and I'm sure many others. And you also have, again, another topic I want to cover, but New York, Mayor Eric Adams is handing illegals $10,000, anybody to stay in their state, free shelter, $600 debit card. And you have people that are literally struggling to pay their basic bills as Americans. I mean, how do you think this is the case? How do we get to the point, or how do these sanctuary cities get to the point where they're just like, okay, we're going to take these people in. It's clearly not sustainable, but what do you think is the end goal here?
Well, the end goal would be, unfortunately, I think the people need to have a peaceful protest. I never encourage people to have a violent protest. I mean, if you look at peaceful protests in the past, I love to use Martin Luther King, for example. He held a peaceful protest, and look how remembrance that man is. I mean, we still talk about him to this day. So if you get enough people on the same page and you say, you know what, we're going to call off work and we're going to peacefully protest because we don't agree with the policies that are being implemented, things can be done. Your voices will be heard. The one thing I don't want people to do is go out there and act like buffoons, like the BLM rioters. That is just complete nonsense. I think whenever you cause destruction, it makes your message less, what's the word I'm looking for? Less persuasive. It's harder to almost agree with someone. I have family members that are more Democratic than conservative, and that they just could not get down with the BLM simply because of the protest. I mean, for your viewers and for yourself, Kacee, I'm actually in St. Louis. And so during the BLM protest, there was actually a gas station that was burnt. And it was actually very surprising. I saw people I went to high school with on Facebook Live chanting there at this protest, and they were having a grand old time. It seemed like they were celebrating the 4th of July. It was actually unbelievable. The fact of the matter is that people need to hold peaceful protests and not get violent. That is the one thing that will discredit everything. The second you get violent, your message is unheard. It will not be looked at. It will not be presented the same.
You're exactly right. Look at Black Lives Matter. How many people do you see walking around with those shirts anymore? Like hardly anybody. And most Black Americans, from my perspective, actually are quite offended by that message. So it didn't resonate with the people like they thought it would. It certainly worked at first as a psychological operation to get these people enraged, and even people of different descents, even white people that I knew, were crazy enough to go on their Instagrams and post a black screen the day that this happened without no other knowledge. They just said, "Oh, well, everybody else did. I feel bad."
Right.
I mean, it's just a complete it's a brainwash. It's a tactic used to basically just give false information and persuade the younger generations, especially, to think things like America's racist, to think things like we are not a unified country. And part of me thinks that what the deep state and the left are trying to accomplish here is, I think, especially with the New York thing, I think they understand they're not getting people with reason, right? The average person, Republican, Libertarian, even most liberals, some liberals, they're not falling for this garbage anymore. So that's when they have to resort to force, or they have to, get illegals into this country so they can somehow get them to vote for their poor policies. It starts to maybe kind of hit a light bulb in my head to think, okay, you're giving these people all this money. You're knowingly trying to destroy America. And I don't know, with me, is it like, do you think that these American leaders that are allowing this to happen, do you think this is something that they're doing themselves, or do you think this is like a globalist threat that's like maybe some like the World Economic Forum? Do you think that has any impact on the way the world is right now, or the country? I mean,
well, I'm glad you brought up the WEF. I think this all actually has ties into the WEF. If you listen to the people in the WEF, like Carl Schwab, others, one huge one, George Soros, they're very clear on their message. It's very hard not to hear their message. They want a one world government. And so, Kacee, something I'd like to let you and your viewers know, especially about the southern border. I have a very clear observation of why this is happening. So 2020 COVID happened. The lockdowns implemented. In blue states, we saw some severe laws put in place. What happened? A lot of American citizens moved out of the blue states into red states because they were tired of sitting at home, tired of these laws that were implemented. Oh, so what's a way to fix that? Because guess what? Unfortunately, they lost a lot of voters from this, okay? Let's open up the southern border. Let's bring in illegal immigrants, grant them with money, free housing. Let's convince them America is the place to be. And guess what? There's no other way to do it than tell them Democrats helped you doing it. And then they went a step further into making sanctuary cities. And then, Kacee, I want to be very clear on this. Sanctuary cities it's a scary thing, because let's say if Donald Trump is reelected and he puts Title 42 back into place and we have mass deportation. The thing that is scary about sanctuary cities is it actually protects illegal immigrants in those cities and protects them from actually being deported. So the people that run, or the governors of these states and the mayors of these cities that have made these laws possible, I believe this was all a plan. I mean, they knew what they were doing. Again, these people aren't stupid. They look at us like we're stupid. They think that we can't think outside the box. We can't see what they're doing. But no, they're doing this solely to basically reshape America. And something also I'd like to share with you, Kacee, which I actually learned through my union, which is very scary. In two cities, Chicago and LA, they are now allowing illegal immigrants to carry the badge. So an illegal immigrant can go through a course and become a police officer.
Wow, I did not. You said Chicago and LA, this is allowed?
Yes. This is public information. It was just put into place in January, I believe. But here's what I have a problem with this, right? What would stop an illegal immigrant from raiding someone's house because they're told to do so, or else they're going to be deported? We've both heard the term police state, right? This is literally happening in front of our eyes. The police state is coming in those cities, in Chicago and LA. The fact of the matter is, I don't know how many people within those areas are seeing what's going on. And like in both cities, that they have gun reform laws. Okay, so you give illegal immigrants the badge, you give them power to basically arrest people. What would stop them from raiding a whole street? Nothing. Nothing would. And so, without being able to defend yourself, what are you going to do? I mean, of course, people will comply in that instance. So this is all fear mongering, I think, at the biggest stage of life. And yeah, I just wanted to share that little bit of information with you and your viewers. I don't know how many people have heard this before, but I've told people on X about those laws that were implemented in January in both cities, and people are like, wait, are you for real? Or are you just talking out your ass? I'm like, no, I'm being honest. Like, look them up. These are actual laws, Kacee. Like, these literally have been put in place in January of 2024. And again, it goes back to the southern border. Look how many people and look at the numbers that have come in the last 3 years. Why did they just now make this law? I'll leave that for others to answer.
Exactly. I mean, it's just so obvious that something is not right here. It's a very deep plan. It's really interesting when you think that they actually just met in Davos for their yearly event and for the World Economic Forum. And it wasn't. I mean, obviously the the border's been bad, but I feel like events have been quite different in the past month than they have been before. So I think there was some sort of coordination between these people to really, especially since the election's coming up, to really try to enhance propaganda, to try to get people to come into this country, get free labor. And the fact that they can even have them as police officers blows my mind. I mean, I believe that, but it's where we're headed in the country. I mean, if that's where we're at, I mean, we're not even obeying the Constitution anymore. I mean, people who aren't even granted amnesty can become part of law enforcement. I mean, I don't know where that or how that's even a conversation. I mean, it's absolutely bizarre. And
well,
yeah, I
bottom
think
line, it's clown world stuff, Kacee. I mean, that's the bottom line. This is clown world stuff. We have people in political power right now that are doing things to try to better themselves, not better the people. Let me make that clear again. They're doing things to better themselves, not for the people. It's very funny. If you look at any of these politicians like Nancy Pelosi, Ilhan Omar, I call her Donkey, AOC. It's funny. They say that, oh, we need gun reform laws, we need guns. Look where these people live. They live in gated communities. Anytime they go somewhere, they usually have security with them. So these people are just hypocrites at the bottom end of the day. They say things that make themselves sound good, but at the end of the day, they don't care. They don't care about people like me and you. They care about themselves and the dollars that come in their paycheck.
Yeah, because someone has to be funding this, right? I mean, I don't understand how Mayor Eric Adams can confidently say $10,000 for every person. I have a pretty good feeling that someone else has been funding that, whether it was a non-government organization or it was a government organization. Someone had to have been helping them along the way with that process. And I just have a hard time understanding, like, I guess the World Economic Forum in general, like they want this one world government, one currency, compliance. It's like, how much can they actually take from us in a society? Like, how much will be, like, for instance, they're saying by 2030 we'll have no private ownership, eating bugs on the street. I mean, how much do they expect to push back until we actually do something? Because, I mean, clearly there isn't resistance like we're seeing in other countries. Like, when, in your personal experience or opinion, when will that be, like, what will wake everybody up? What will that event be? Like, what will actually be like, okay, this has been enough? Like, because clearly everything else isn't working, it looks like.
That's a good question, Kacee. To be honest, it's hard for me to answer that question because I don't want to be labeled a conspiracy theorist and I don't want to be looked at as crazy. But I think if things don't go our way of this election, things will drastically change in 2025. And I hope that people are waking up rather than look at things and not do anything about it. I think the thing that could set the alarm is an assassination of someone. I'm not going to say a name, but if someone was assassinated, I think that would be the tipping rock for a lot of people. Or if this person is thrown in jail for whatever reason that they're coming up with these days. So this year is going to be very interesting. It's going to be played out day by day, and I think people really need to keep on their thinking caps here. And something I'd also like to make clear, Casey, is we need our generation to seriously get more involved. If our generation doesn't get involved, who knows where this country's going to go? Because if we look at the 2020 election, our generation wasn't too involved. The numbers were actually kind of sad, in my opinion. But now we're looking at 2022 primaries. Gen Z was very involved. Although it didn't go our way, I kind of leaned over to the blue side. Gen Z is starting to speak up. And another thing I'd like to say about Gen Z is our generation, whether you're Democrat, Republican, liberal, or conservative, Gen Z as whole are very passionate people. I want the older generations to hear me clearly on this. Don't underestimate us because we are the future of this nation and we have great ideas. I mean, for hell, we have been brought up on, we've been brought up on technology. But guess what? We could use that to our advantage. Like, look at jobs. Like, we can seriously use this to the advantage. So I think if we if we get on the right track, our generation's actually going to be the generation to save our country.
No, you're actually right. I mean, it's not crazy to say that somebody that's in their 20s could be much more intelligent than someone in their 40s.
Oh, 100%.
Think about it, right? The older side of the millennials, the 40, 50-year-olds, they went through high school and college with textbooks. I mean, very little internet. I mean, it wasn't portable. You couldn't go anywhere. So, like, it's not crazy to think that these kids that are upbrought in this advancement of technology could be more sophisticated and more productive than some of these middle-aged people that have been indoctrinated to one system, one type of life. And that's the thing, when you actually go through life with a certain set of ideas, there becomes a point when you just indoctrinate them. I mean, that's just human nature. So it's more likely for someone who's already gone through, the half of their life or it's a lot harder for someone like that to break their old ways and to be open to new ideas like we're seeing every single day. I mean, for instance, I'll give a perfect example. Our generation didn't even have the ability to use AI in the way that it is now in the last couple of years. I mean, when I was in high school, I graduated high school in 2019. I didn't have ChatGPT to help me with my finals or my homework. I had the internet, but guess what? When I got to college, this beautiful thing called ChatGPT was invented. Everyone was really suspect at first. I just hopped right on. I started using it for informational purposes. Then I started using it for my essays. I started getting perfect scores and everything. And I mean, it was that much little work I actually had to do. And it saved me so much more time to be productive in other areas of life rather than sitting there with a textbook and having to learn one way when other people like you and me can learn in a plethora amount of ways. I mean, it's just pretty crazy when you think about the difference. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, it's not crazy to think that our generation could be that generation that breaks through and really sets things free. And I do say a lot in my show. I say America first, and we need to put America above foreign interests. I think now we're at a point where, yeah, America first. It's a really good, it's a noble cause. It's awesome. I think we need to free America. We need to free America from foreign interests. We need to stop sending. I don't know how you feel about this, but I think we're at a point where we need to stop sending funding to Israel, Ukraine, at least right now until we get our own house in order. People will say, Republicans and Democrats, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. I don't think we can do either. I think it's in America's best interest to focus on our problems at home, the southern border, the worst economy in 40 years. The fact that even Republicans such as Nikki Haley, they got the rhinos, the establishment, these hardcore Republicans that have been indoctrinated this system, something just changed randomly to where they're so inclined to send foreign aid rather than helping our own country. I don't know what that was. I don't know if this is like some sort of corruption or financial deal, but I just have a hard time understanding how our own Americans are so, it's really like being against our own national security. I mean, I don't know how you feel about that with foreign aid.
No, I completely agree with you, Kacee. And before I go on my little tangent, I would like to make myself clear. I am very pro-Israel, by the way. With that being said, though, I don't think that America should be funding more money over to them. I want to make things clear. Israel can protect themselves, okay? Especially against Hamas. I mean, these people are like little birds, and Israel is like a big old eagle. Let's just put that to perspective. Hamas are like chickens. Israel is a bald eagle. They're okay. They don't need help. And for the people that are supporting these fundings to Ukraine and to Israel, I want them to realize that they are taken away from their children's future, our future, Kacee. I mean, we were talking about how much debt we're in. If we keep spending the money we are spending, if I make a career out of carpentry, I will not have a pension in my future. That will not be existing. Who knows? Is Social Security going to be here in 20, 25 years if we keep spending this money the way we're spending? Probably not. I don't think people are understanding that aspect of things and how much money is actually going over there. And the thing about Ukraine, I'm glad you brought up Ukraine, is I think there's been a lot of propaganda in both wars. There's been a lot of propaganda to kind of make people feel one-sided on the side. If you look at the Russian-Ukraine war, a lot of people are for Ukraine, saying, oh, Russia's the bad guy. If you look at Palestine, they say, oh, Israel's a terrorist state. Palestine's being just annihilated. I want to make this very clear, though, Kacee, is if they look at there's good versus evil in war, that's not the case, okay? If you're naive to believe that, I think they need to do a little bit more research on what's actually going on.
Absolutely. I feel sympathy for both sides when it comes to the Ukraine-Russia war, especially the soldiers. I mean, these guys, they may not even agree with what's going on, but they're being taught this garbage and they're being forced against their will to fight this opposing side. And the whole ordeal with the Ukraine and Russia situation, I can go on for hours, but to sum it up, essentially, there was a U.S. coup in 2014 that we got involved and shut down the Ukraine government. Therefore, our involvement clearly pissed off Russia, and we did not allow Russia to become part of NATO. And many can have their own speculation as to why. But you look at the timeline of the last 40 years, we've been very exclusive of Russia. We've denied their access to the UN in the 1980s when Bill Clinton was president. There was actually a conversation that Clinton told Putin that, it's a very possible outcome that you could be a part of UN. He comes back a couple weeks later and says it's not possible. Wasn't very straight up with them, but said this isn't going to happen. So you actually question, I'm not saying Vladimir Putin's the best person. I think he is protecting his country, but I think that there's a fine line between protecting your country and someone who is potentially wanting to start massive wars. But I can understand Putin's position as to why he doesn't necessarily see too fond of the United States right now. I mean, we basically denied his access for everything. We stepped into Ukraine's situation. We basically infiltrate everything going on because that's what the United States likes to do. And again, these people who did this, I'm not saying that they're evil in the United States. They probably thought that they were being good, that this was in America's interest somehow. And unfortunately, our involvement got way too heavy, and now we're talking about sending $60 billion over there. I mean, I don't know how that can be on the table at all. I mean, again, I don't really understand what Ukraine has to offer us that much. I mean, I understand there's imports and exports, but I don't understand the way that they're treating this. I mean, they're almost acting like Ukraine is our top ally, our number one trading partner, when that's clearly not the case. So you're exactly right. I think there's a lot of propaganda when it comes to both wars. And that's what's gonna take to divide the entire world. You have good versus evil, like you said. And if that's the case, then how are you gonna find a middle ground when, by law, your government has told you you have to follow orders, you have to execute this, you have to carry out these very atrocious incidents that are gonna leave a scar on the human persona. So I really think that if we had a way to get rid of a lot of these unelected bureaucrats, if we could cut down government to a point, we could have more open conversations as to why we're even funding these countries. We could actually step in and say, okay, there is a serious issue with this, and the fact that this is so split in half, Republican, Democrat, whoever it is, I mean, it's a real issue, especially when in Senate and Congress when this is the case. And that almost brings me to the point. Is our elected leaders, are they that incompetent to do their job to where maybe we just need a complete change? We just need I'm not saying get rid of everybody, get rid of the unelected bureaucrats, but also, I mean, maybe impose term limits on some of these people like Mitch McConnell in my own home state of Kentucky. He's a Republican, but he's literally just destroying the label of what it means to be a Republican. That's why I don't even like using it. I like saying America first, patriot, nationalist, regardless, or whatever. But people like him are just destroying this party and destroying the unification of what we have. From my perspective, I mean, if you actually saw it, I put it on my X a couple days ago. It's humiliating. You think Joe Biden's bad at speeches and he looks bad. I mean, look at Mitch McConnell. This guy is a walking corpse. I mean, he literally looks like he was sitting there for a straight 2 minutes in a speech. He literally, I mean, I'm like, he froze. Like, he literally froze. So his staff had to come up and grab him during the speech to make sure he didn't fall over, and they had to call the thing off. I mean, it's truly embarrassing. And what do you think the foreign leaders are looking at this and saying? This is a joke. I mean, how can they take us serious? And I want to hear your take on this. How can other countries take us serious when this is how we're treating our own nation?
Well, they can't. The countries look at us. I think right now America is looked at as a laughing stock. I mean, if you look at the American media and you look at especially our military right now, I'd like to give a quick segment of our military. Right now, Kacee, our military has the lowest recruitment numbers we've ever seen. Lowest recruitment numbers. I need people to seriously understand that. Lowest recruitment numbers.
Wait, meaning like people are not signing up to be in the military today? Like there's not demand?
Correct. Mm-hmm. So people are not wanting to join the military. And I think there's two reasons to this being. One, the force of the vaccine. Two, they became woke. I mean, you see videos on TikTok of some people in the military that are pretending to be girls and they're men. There's other nations that look at this and they're taking notes, okay? In other countries, they don't allow this shit for a reason because they know it's a distraction. They know it can lead to very bad turmoil in the future. So I think we need to be very careful about being involved with Israel and Ukraine because we don't want to piss off the wrong person. Because if there is and happens to be a World War III, they're going to call upon our generation first, Kacee. Me and you will be the first ones on that battlefield. And I don't know if I trust everyone in our generation to protect my or your back. It's a scary world in today's age. And what you were saying about the elected leaders, it's very interesting. Yes, I completely agree with you. We need term limits. I mean, with Joe Biden, some people would argue with Trump, but I mean, not even the comparison. I mean, the two are, I mean, you have North and South Pole. One could speak very well, and one can't even say two words in a sentence. But then you look at Mitch McConnell, and then you can also talk about, who's the senator from Pennsylvania, Fetterman. That guy.
Fetterman, yeah.
Well, you look at some of these people, and you want to ask yourself, why are these people representing me? Why don't we have people that are our age or in their 30s that are well spoken, that can think on the split? I want someone that could think on the split, that could act fast, and that could speak clearly. I don't want someone that takes them 5-10 minutes to think of something. I mean, and also the thing that's scary is a lot of these elected officials, Kacee, they're above 60 or 70 years old. So of course they're sending money. Of course they're spending money. It's not going to affect them in 20 years. What the hell do they care? Oh, it's just time being. Who cares? I'll be dead in 20 years anyways. They don't not care. I promise you. So yes, I would be in support of a change. I'd be open to different ideas. I don't know if I'm set to one as of right now. I'd be open to hear from both sides, though, to see what people would have to say about that.
Yeah, I'm in the same position. I'm not necessarily against or for it. I think it's a very good conversation to have. But I mean, we have, like I said, we have elected officials that are clearly incompetent. And I think we need new generational leaders. We need people that can step in. It's not even like you need to have this crazy experience. You need to be a career politician. All you need to have is just the ability to want to change America and make a difference. I mean, that really is all it takes. And you see, there are people running for Congress and Senate that have never even stepped foot in the political arena. I think there was a guy I saw the other day. It was an ad. I can't remember his name. He's running for Wisconsin. He's just a regular blue collar worker. He sees there's a terrible issue with our country and he wants to help. And I see a same deal with people in our generation. There's a lot of Gen Z people because you have to actually be 24 years old to run for state representative or official position. although there are other things you can do. But there's a lot of people that are 23, 24 that are currently running right now that I've been very supportive of. We have people like TJ Roberts. We have, what's his name? Nico in Arizona. I met him the other day. A really cool dude. We have a lot of people that are younger and are wanting to step in and make a difference. And honestly, I'm very impressed. I mean, the fact that some people that I've seen step in with 1 or less years of experience, I mean, it's like it's not even, you tell right off the bat, do these people have interest in helping us, or are they bought and paid from somebody else? That's the biggest thing I can tell by having a conversation, because I like to go to dinners with political candidates in my area just to have an idea what they're about, and we'll sit down and have a couple-hour conversation about policy. And I'm just very impressed with the people who I've talked to of my generation, 25 and less. I mean, it's a big difference when you go and talk to someone who's been a career politician their entire life, whether you're talking about someone, for instance, like Matt Gaetz, which I'm really supportive of. I'd be willing to bet you'd hear different perspective from someone like Matt Gaetz, who's an upper millennial, than someone like you or me, who's, I guess end of the Gen Z era. So there's a lot of different perspectives we need, I think, and there's not enough of our generation. I don't think there's anybody besides maybe 2 people that are actually, have monumental positions of our generation. I don't even think they're Republican, to be honest.
We used to have, I think Madison Crawford for a little bit in Congress. I don't know if he's still in.
He was he North Carolina, or where was he out of?
He was North Carolina. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember he was good. He was in. I think I don't know if he didn't get reelected or if he dropped out, but he was really good. I mean, we have a lot of people who want to make a change more than we realize, and that's what it's going to be. I think there's going to be a major paradigm shift with our generation. It's going to take, just regular Americans who want to put our country first. And there are so many people right now in power that do not want that. And I don't know if, an election is going to change that overnight. It's going to take a long time, and building up ideologies and perspectives of what it means to be an American. And I think a lot of us have lost that. And it's sad to say, but many people didn't grow up in my generation, our generation included, we didn't grow up in a prosperous society. We didn't grow up in, the best of times to be an American, although we are in the greatest country in the world. There needs to be some changes. And again, whether it's an elected official, whether this is implementing policies, it's clearly not working. The overfunding to foreign nations isn't at our own interest, or we would see a drastic decrease with the debt. We wouldn't just keep seeing, 34 trillion, coming up on 35. You would think there would be a really valid consideration on how we're spending this, and that we need to be much more careful. But rather, we disguise something as a border bill that's supposed to help our own country. It's like filled with like $180 billion. 60 goes to Israel, or 60 goes to Ukraine, 14 to Israel, 9 to Taiwan, and the rest goes to, I can't remember, something that doesn't benefit us, obviously. But I just hate how that people are just so, okay, well, we'll just send money. It's no big deal. Future generations will pay for it. It's like there's no consequences to our current establishment. And I think that's something that needs to change.
Oh, 100%. And to touch a little bit more on what you just said, Kacee, the thing that really bothers me that it seems like now a lot of Americans care about is the situation that happened in Maui last year. Mm-hmm. I mean, insurance companies are giving these people lost everything, their home, their livelihood. They lost everything. And these insurance companies are giving them $800. Oh, sorry, here's $800. Good luck trying to restart your life. This is a fucking joke. I'm sorry, but it makes my blood boil. And I'm not going to get too deep into that because I actually do get a little bit emotional over that topic. And I don't want your viewers or yourself to get that idea of me.
Absolutely not. We're free speech in this platform, but that was a crazy issue. And again, it didn't get enough attention. It was something that literally eviscerated within 1 week in the media. And again, the fact at the time, I think we sent about $100 billion to Ukraine total, 0 to Hawaii. Like you said, maybe the $800 did something, but I mean, $800 when you completely lost your property, how is that going to help? You got to get back on your feet, including this egregious economy. It's like they're just knowingly trying to destroy us in real time. But I mean, I don't think that, how is it that controversial to say, let's just help Hawaii out. Let's focus on this as a number one issue. I don't know what changed along the way, whether it was the last 20 years, the last 10, COVID, whatever it was, something seriously has gone wrong, and it's almost like the people who are in charge could care less.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe they care less, or maybe it's that they have another agenda at play. Like I said, maybe they're in ties with the World Economic Forum to really purport this agenda that we need to have a one world government, one currency, complete compliance with everybody. We see in countries like, not to change the subject, but we see in countries like China, they've actually established a social credit score. It's the same thing that they're trying to do in the United States. I saw a video. It's pretty alarming. So essentially, there's this like database set up to where, and there's machines on the road so they can basically see if you have if you're speeding, if you're breaking the law on the road. There are machines and cameras that will capture that, and they'll automatically have your license and registration, and they'll send you the ticket. Like, so it's not like you have to get pulled over anymore. They'll attach this to your they call it the social credit score. Basically, it's something that it's a score that the elites impose on you to say how compliant are you to the rules. The social credit score is deep. It's basically, what do you put on social media? How is that considered propaganda? How many times you've been arrested? They're going to give people these scores based on how the government views them. As crazy as that sounds. So like, if you're somebody like Elon Musk, Andrew Tate, or Alex Jones, I don't believe they're going to get pretty high credit scores, and even myself included, because these elites do not accept this type of narrative, and they're trying to shut it down at all costs. And they're willing to it's pretty crazy, actually, not change the subject again, but in Tucker Carlson, he had a guy named Mike Benz on there tonight. This guy literally says that the cybersecurity network that we have in the United States, or the infrastructure, if you were to say something on Twitter that opposes that or is deemed as propaganda, they consider you committing a cyber attack on the United States just by tweeting something. I mean, I was like, this is insane, but it's actually the truth, though. It was more so in the 2016 election when that was more implemented. But even now today, I mean, just by putting something on your phone that opposes the mainstream narrative that can, publicly undermine the opinion of society, then they're going to go to the fullest extent. We see Julian Assange right now. I mean, just because he had evidence that Hillary Clinton beat Bernie Sanders, basically cheated with votes in that election and won. And you have also, like I said earlier, the Iraq shooting that the government denied for so long, then Assange proves them to be lying. So, and he's completely silenced in isolation in a prison cell. So these are the consequences that are coming. The social credit score is just the tip of the iceberg. We're seeing with other countries like the Chinese Communist Party and very just communistic ideologies that are nothing but imposing on the people. And again, I will say there's one thing that I do agree with when it comes to, I guess, the way that the communistic system is run is basically that they have, like, when it comes to resources, right? They believe that it should be equally distributed to the working man, to the people, rather than how we have in the United States. We have BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard. They basically control and they hoard all the resources like oil, water, food, shelter. That's the only thing I agree with the communistic system. Everything else is completely garbage, taking away private ownership. But I really think that to be a sovereign nation, to be a fully, American-backed nation, we have to cut off ties with these foreign nations. We have to go the American way, and we can learn from. I think it's important, like I said, we can learn from other nations and how they progress. And we even see in countries like Dubai, they have no income tax, no property, no. I believe it's no sales tax, and they're functioning just fine. So, I mean, it's all in all, it's a complete joke when you talk about the feds and the policies that they're trying to implement onto the people. I really don't think it takes somebody with, it doesn't take rocket science. It doesn't take someone with a PhD to see this.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree, Kacee. And the last thing I'd like to say, if you're okay with that, I don't know how much time you have tonight.
Yeah,
but,
it's all good.
For anyone that is more interested in what I have to say, I encourage you guys to follow me on X at the Goldberg Show. And then with that being said, Kacee, I would just like to give a message out to your viewers, which I try to say this every day I wake up, which is stay alive, keep breathing, laugh every day, smile, and not let negativity get in any way. You can say whatever you want about me. I'm still going to smile. I don't give a shit. I'm a happy individual. I'm a content individual. No matter what you say or what you're trying to do, you can't piss on my dreams, and I will continue to live my life that way until the day I die. And with that being said, Kacee, I've had nothing but an honor to be on your show, and I am looking forward to being on again in the future.
Absolutely, man. I love having your perspective. We'll definitely have you on again. I actually want to do a panel in the future. We actually were supposed to do a debate with Harry and Chris. It was basically supposed to be like a Gen Z debate, but it never happened as of yet. So I'll fill you in on that. We'll probably have that going, and I'd love to have you on the show again. It's good to have perspectives like this. And one more thing I want to add, we did cover a lot of, I guess, dark subjects that people could consider, but that's the whole point of this, is the premise of being a free American. We have to talk about these things openly so people can have their own opinions and decipher in their own way of how we can construct this country. But again, Mr. Goldberg, it was an honor to have you on this show, and we're looking forward to have you on again.
Thank you, Kacee.
Absolutely.